Hey Charles,
Hey, Scott, how nice to see you.
good to see you. How is it going?
Things are pretty heavenly on the West Coast. It's 70, 75 with cool breezes day
Very
after day, and we try not to be smug.
well, we've got a lovely day here too. It's
Good,
very nice,
good.
very nice. Nice change from the heat and humidity,
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad it's better. And boy, you are doing some real scholarship and adding to your toolbox, and I'm just very pleased by it all, and I'm very glad to be in touch.
Great, good to be talking to you, Charles. I've been learning quite a bit, and
No,
it's opening my eyes. And there's a lot more to learn. There's a lot of theory and peace and conflict studies. There's a lot of stuff that I guess applicability things that they're not trying, and on current peace initiatives. So,
no.
did you see about the BRICS summit today? The
I
BRICS.
did not.
Okay. Okay. They're having it all this week. The Brazil, Russia, India, China. What was it? It's the fifth one. South Africa.
Oh, South Africa. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
I know what you mean. Yes. Uh-huh.
mhm. Yes, that's more people are joining in on that. And let's see, to begin, I guess I'll introduce myself. And I am Scott. I host the blog that I hope people will be watching us on,
Great.
and it's called Peace Dog.
I
And
love that title. Love that title. Good for you.
thanks. And as you're aware, I was tapped by World Beyond War and Fields of Peace to participate in the Ignite Circle pilot project. Um,
Right.
could you please let whoever might be watching let them know a little bit about yourself and a brief history of Fields of Peace?
Sure. I live on the coast of Oregon with my family, and I've been involved in peace work for formally for at least 30 years, both as a parish minister in the United Church of Christ, but primarily in a couple of experiments in peace programs. The first being Peace Village, Inc. Uh, that started 25 years ago, where we, as a result of a bullying incident in a local high school here, and we decided to put together a summer program, a camp for children ages 6 to 13 to learn how to handle conflict in nonviolent ways. And we did that with an interfaith program. We had uh, Native American shaman, we had imams and rabbis and Buddhists, and we even had a few Christians around uh, and teaching the children. And that grew. We had it spread to 11 states
Wow.
and is now in Lebanon and Kenya. And I stepped out of that 10 years ago, loving it, but turning it over to younger people with more and better ideas. And I wanted to do peace education with adults. And so I started something called Fields of Peace. That name was inspired by a Sufi poet you probably know named Rumi. And he said the verses were like go like this: uh, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So that's how we came to the name Fields of Peace. And we did workshops. We did a book of stories called Soft as Water. We wanted to make peace interesting. Thank you for holding that up. We wanted to make it interesting. And so there are 52 stories for people to read. And Some of them are gentle and have to do with practices for peace within us. And some of them are very activist and talk about really getting out and some of the real problems in the world that we need to make a stand and hear our voices speaking truth to power. That peace education program took a turn 5 years ago when I read, by chance, a report on a panel discussion called War and Ethics that was held at Stanford University. And one of the panel members there, a very distinguished jurist from South Africa called Robert Goldstone, and he was also one of the first prosecutors at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And he said something that I wondered why I'd never heard of it before. He said, in the last 100 years, the nature of the war has changed. That is, in World War I, for every 9 combatants killed, 1 civilian was killed. So they were really collateral damage. That changed dramatically in World War II, where for every 1 combatant killed, 1 civilian was killed. And that had to do with moving from battlefields to bombing urban centers. And then in the last 40 years, the numbers have changed. The ratio has changed dramatically again. And now for every 1 combatant killed, 9 civilians are killed. And of those 9 civilians, the majority are children. So the nature of war over the past 100 years has changed dramatically. And it's not an exaggeration to say that war has become the killing of civilians and, in fact, the killing of children. So we put together a program based on that called Something Obvious. What can we do? What can you and I do? And we said, well, the obvious thing is we can make a promise to our children. Let's start with that. Let's start on the level of vow. As a preacher, I'm a great believer in the power of the spoken word. When it's spoken and repeated, it not only goes in and changes us through repetition, we become better at becoming good trouble, necessary trouble, but it also goes out in a prophetic way for other people to hear. And that promise is 48 words. It's very simple, but it's a starting point for people. And that's the promise. Would you be willing to read it, Scott? Those 48 words.
It would be my pleasure, Charles.
Okay.
Okay. It says, "I promise to our children," this is Charles's words, "I will not be a part of the killing of any child, no matter how lofty the reason, not my neighbor's child, not my child, not the enemy's child, not by bomb, not by bullet, not by looking the other way. I will be the power that is peace."
Thank you. So that was our simple idea. Let's start with a promise and see where it takes us. And as we had time to think about it, we saw that it had 4 foundations. And we wrote a book, which is really a kind of curriculum called A Promise to Our Children, A Field Guide to Peace. And in that book, we outline the foundations that underlie the promise, which you know, Scott, from having studied it, but they're quite simple. Conscience is one foundation. Empathy is another, power of the spoken word, and then finally taking action in the world. So that has now had 5 years to progress. We've learned a lot from people we've sat with to teach this and to hear from them and to hear their stories. Most recently, and what has really been heartening to us, Scott, is that this promise and this foundation has taken off in some of the most dangerous and war-torn countries in the world. And by that, I mean East Africa. Since January, we have had training circles, which you know we call Ignite Circles, uh, in 8 countries in South Africa. And as of January, we have trained 54 teachers, and those primarily in South Sudan, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, and Somalia. So it's really heartening to know that people who have experienced trauma and need ways to deal with it and don't want it repeated again for their children and in their countries, they are using the promise. Uh, our future plans are going in another direction with a new kind of Ignite Circle, and that is we are going to go to Cameroon, the western part of Cameroon, where there's considerable violence right now and has been for a number of years. And we're going to go to the classrooms in towns and villages where children are living in conflict zones and feel that threat or have already experienced trauma. And we're going to work with them to hear their voices, to hear their fears, their traumas, and not only help heal them, but let their voices be heard by adults, so that adults will be ready to make a really serious commitment and promise to the children. So that's where we're headed in a couple of months, is to Cameroon.
Wow, wow. I wasn't aware of that. That's incredible. Thank you. I mean, the that you expanded in South Sudan. I take. Can we? Do you mind if I mention Bior's name? I guess he's all
No,
over my
no,
blog. And
he's one of your buddies. Yes, go ahead.
yes, yes. It's I haven't talked to him in a while, but I would like to. I always love to hear from Bjor. He's an amazing peacemaker, and it's just so heartening to hear that he spread the word of the promise, um, so successfully there. Back to so that's the current Ignite circles in Africa we've got, and that's what you've got on the horizon. Now you've kind of uh, added to the staff there and the board at Fields of Peace.
We've grown up. In addition to all of you who've been a part of Ignite Circles, and I've really valued the bonding of these friendships and the way we inspire one another. And you, Scott, certainly are becoming such a resource and so growing in your understanding of peace and what we need to do today to help people really endorse nonviolence and see the practicality of it. We are we've added for the first time through a modest but surprise gift enough funds to hire a professional peacekeeper, and we hired a young woman named Reem Gruem, and she grew up in conflict zone. She's Palestinian, and she's come to the United States. She's gotten graduate degrees in peace studies and conflict resolution. But more than that, she's done a great deal of international work, both with Rotary and a number of other organizations. So she comes to us with quite a background, and we're very fortunate to have her join us. So she is the executive director now. I had that title as founder, but am so pleased to hand it over to the next generation, or I should even say my grandchildren's generation. So Reem is leading now, and she's really the one who has had the vision of getting into the classroom with children who are traumatized and hearing their voices and helping them to really help us to understand that we need to be saving these children.
That's wonderful, and that makes me think of the peace literacy work I was just doing with Paul Chappell's group, Peace Literacy
Yeah.
Institute, and they have some elementary peace literacy instruction stuff that I'm sure they would love to collaborate with Fields of Peace, I would imagine. I can definitely try to connect y'all if you'd like. Just let me know. And
That would be a privilege, and I'll remind you of that and be in touch.
okay, awesome. Let's see. Anything else you wanted to talk about Fields of Peace, Charles?
Well, it's really, this piecework is very local.
And I
And
did get to read The Invisible
uh,
Child, and
yeah, great.
wow, wow. This is another book of Charles's that
Yeah,
I recommend. There are
thanks.
three: The Invisible Child, and Soft as Water, and Promise to Our Children, which I have
Yeah.
marked up.
Thank, thanks for holding those up. The latest one, The Invisible Child, is only 35 pages. I mentioned that because sometimes we don't feel like taking on too much, but we want to get the gist. And I wrote The Invisible Child uh, to convey as best I could the emotional commitment to children. Uh, the earlier book, A Promise to Our Children, really had to do more with academic and a more intellectual or theoretical approach to the foundation. But The Invisible Child speaks to the emotional issues for all of us in the commitment. So thanks for holding that up. I
Definitely.
yeah. Last thing I mentioned is it's so local, and it's humbling. My wife and I used to do peace workshops together, and I remember opening one and with positive energy in my voice. And my wife was the next one to speak, and she said, "Charles, I think we need to be honest. As we drove here to the university to do this workshop, we weren't getting along so well and we weren't very peaceful." So it's very, this work's humbling. It's always a work in progress. And uh, in my spiritual life and religious life, I've really found how important practices are to keep as best we can.
The
We all
promise.
have bad days, and every day has some challenging wins. But to have practices that center us, and then that in a very real way, those practices send us out to, in good faith, do the public work. And I just think that's so important.
Agreed.
I'm so glad you're doing this blog. You are more than qualified to do it. You have a gentle nature and light, and I think people can hear your voice and really listen and be inspired by it. So I'm very grateful for the work you're doing and for our friendship.
Thank you. I am likewise to you, sir.
Thank you.
I mean, it's been. Speaking of what's that? Namaste.
Namaste.
Have you spoken to Dr. Agarwal recently?
I have indeed.
Oh,
We
great.
were in touch this morning.
Oh,
She
excellent.
has she has started a journal. I have a feeling it's going to be a very accessible journal that came out for the first time, and it's a program called Global Gandhi. Global Gandhi, and uh, I'm on the advisory board to Global Gandhi, which is a privilege. And she asked for me to send an article to be included in their first journal, which they sent out on the anniversary of the U.S. bombing of Nagasaki, August 9. I haven't seen the journal yet, but I'm very proud of what they're doing. The article I have in there is to make some suggestions of imagined suggestions about how the Ukrainians could have met uh, the war in nonviolent ways. Easy to give advice from this safe distance so far away, but it's something I imagined and they're sharing, and I'm so I've been in touch with her. She's doing fantastic work. And
Wonderful.
her center is called the Center for Nonviolence New Delhi.
Senti Shayog.
Shayog. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great,
Thanks
great.
for remembering that. I have trouble. I stumble on it once in a while.
Shanti, Shanti, means peace in Hindu, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. So,
Yes.
one more thing, I was thinking, the World Beyond War conference coming up. I believe they're going to have David Swanson talk about nonviolent alternatives Ukraine could have taken. Um,
Ooh.
and This is in September, late September. I've registered. And they're going to have Ray McGovern speak as to why the Russians had no choice, and then
Hmm.
someone else to speak why Ukraine had no choice but to fight. So
Okay.
it'll be interesting. I hope to tune into
Yeah.
that.
Aren't we lucky to be a part of that World Beyond War network? And I have such respect for David Swanson and Greta Zarro and all the people there. Uh, and thanks for reminding me. I will register as well. I want to hear what David has to say about that.
Excellent. Good to hear. And that one, I'm sorry, I keep thinking of things we haven't spoken in so long.
Yes.
The War Made Invisible book by Norman Solomon I told you about. He mentioned the ratio, and I think he had it like 80 to 95% are civilians these days. So I
Yes.
mean, there's different data, different places, but it's not exactly the same. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's very, very close. I mean, 1 to 9, and
Yeah.
that's just unacceptable.
Uh, I'd appreciate you sending me the uh, particular on his statement and the reference on it so I can add it to those that I'm collecting.
Oh, David
Yeah.
Swanson's.
Yeah.
I'll
Or
see.
okay.
Oh,
Uh, yes. When we end, I want to end with a little poetry.
oh, please,
When you're
please.
done. When you're
Well, well, I think that's about it. Yeah.
okay.
I'm
Okay. Well, in this business where we're really trying to end war and stop the killing of children, uh, poetry is a great sustenance to me, and I have lots of favorite poets. But one of them is Boris Pasternak, who wrote Dr. Zhivago. And at the very back of that book, there are a number of poems, and he ends one of his poems. The poem's called Daybreak, with four lines. And I've taken them and substituted a couple of words of my own, taken those liberties. Uh, and so it goes like this, but this sustains me a bit. Uh, in me are children without names, killed, wounded, orphaned. I am conquered by them all, and this is my only victory. So
wow.
in me are children without names. Yeah.
Wow.
So there we are. We carry them around with us. We love them.
Yes. Yes. Wow, that's so profound. Um, Thank you for sharing that.
You bet. You bet. Thanks to Mr. Pasternak and allowing me to tinker with his genius.
Sounds
Scott,
good.
thank you for the compliment of including me on your blog, and best to you, brother.
Best to you, brother, and thank you for everything, all the opportunities you've given me to explore peaceful avenues.
You bet.
Our friendship. It just means a lot to me, and I hope we can continue it as long as we're able.
Indeed. We'll do more and more work together.
I hope so.